Welcome to Dead Headspace. I'm your host, Patrick R. McDonough, joined always by my co-host, Brennan LaFaro. Say hi, Brennan.
Hello, everybody.
Today, we are joined with the co-founder of Death's Head Press, along with the author of many wonderful books, including his upcoming one, Visceral 2, with Daniel Volpe. Is that how you say his surname, Volpe?
I think it's Daniel Volpe. I believe it's French, and there's supposed to be one of those little silly marks on the end.
I think that's
Daniel Volpe.
Daniel Volpe. So, along with Daniel Volpe is my friend Patrick C. Harrison III. Say hi, Patrick.
Hi, guys. Thank you for having me on.
I should have thrown in a connoisseur. I also love that you got a scally cap. Audio listeners, he has a scally cap on.
Looking like a proper Irishman.
Weird thing to point out. Just throwing that out there. I got no hat. Brendan has a Red Sox hat. Pat, what got you into horror?
Okay, I knew this question was coming because I watched enough of your episodes. Nobody in my family was ever into horror, in my immediate family anyway. And so I've thought about this at length, like, why did I take this dive into horror? And, I grew up in the era of like unsolved mysteries. I loved one of my favorite shows of all time. I still watch it. You can get it free on Roku. It's like constantly streaming all day long. And the Twilight Zone, I loved. Tales from the Crypt, I loved. So all those TV shows. But what really got me into it was probably the books. And I still got some from my childhood here, so I'm going to show them to your audience. This one's Ghost Stories from Old Texas.
Oh, that's cool looking.
Written by a lady named Zanita Fowler. I got her signature back in 1993. So, and then this one here is Spine Chillers, a little collection of horror stories. And then this bad boy, Alfred Hitchcock's Haunted Houseful. And that has a lot of nice art in it too, and some old ghost stories. And that kind of stuff just had me enraptured even as a child. And I think in the sixth grade, I think I wrote my first horror short story, and it was totally influenced by all this kind of stuff, whether it be TV shows or horror books. And of course, I read Stephen King's Night Shift, and it just sent me over the edge. But that's where it all began, I guess.
I love that collection. So that collection or anthology for Hitchcock. Actually, I saw that at a thrift store. I saw the very same edition, and the illustrations in there are really cool, man.
Yeah, they are. They used to have such great illustrations in books. They don't hardly do that anymore. You're kind of seeing a comeback of it with some indie horror authors, like Aaron Beauregard does that. He has a lot of illustrations in his books, but you don't really see it on the mass market books anymore.
You know what? It's funny that you bring him up, because I was talking to Mr. Volpe, and
by the way, it's really not pronounced that way. I'm totally fucking with him.
There's no accent mark on his last name too. But yeah, speaking of him, I know that because I just talked to him a little while ago, that he has this podcast, and it's with Aaron, called Written in Red. It's with Aaron and who's it? Carver Pike.
Yeah, I was just on there 3 days ago.
Yeah, so he didn't mention that, because I asked him if he has anything that he would like me to relay to you on air, and he said that he would like to say, even though he was your 8th pick in co-writing Visceral 2, that he's flattered, and by the way, he's kidding. He did tell me that Chandler Morrison was your first pick, so let's just dive into that. And I'm totally, Brendan, just bookmark this. I'm sorry, man, I didn't think we were going straight into this, but first off, why Chandler for your number 1 pick? And secondly, why was Daniel your second pick?
Well, so let me start from the beginning. We did Visceral Collected Flesh. I did with Christine Morgan, who's like pretty much one of my favorite authors ever. She should be getting published by the Big Five. I just love Christine. And so I had the idea to continue the series where every year or so I would write 4 stories, and someone else would write 4 stories, and it'd be a different Visceral book every year. And I initially landed on Chandler. And by the way, I didn't even know who Volpe was at the time I picked Chandler, but I picked Chandler because I just recently read Dead Inside, and oh my God, I mean, what a visceral book that is, you know, just the epitome of splatterpunk. And so I asked him on it. He said, yeah, let's do it. And several months later, he emailed me and said, man, I just don't have time to work on this collection. Can we do it another time? Because I initially had a deadline for December 2021. And I said, yeah, it's fine. No problem. And so I was like, man, either I don't put out a Visceral 2 or I got to find somebody else. And at that time, I just received Daniel Volpe's Talia, and had started reading that. And it was just really fucked up, really gruesome, really visceral in its own right. And, you know, I didn't even really know him, but I reached out to him. I was like, hey, would you be interested? And I said, full disclosure, you weren't my first choice. It was Chandler Morrison. But, you know, I said, you want to write 4 body horror splatterpunk stories, and I'll do the same. We'll put this book together. And he immediately responded with, hell yeah, let's go. So that's how it ended up.
Brendan,
I thought you had a follow-up question, but no, I'll jump in. I think it would have been cool to have Chandler in there, but I thought you and Daniel had a really good, I can't think of a better way to put it than a back and forth. You know, the book reads like a conversation. And, you know, even though you guys put your stories together separately, there's, you know, and part of it's the nature of the, you know, type of stories that you were looking to include, but there's just this like, you know, top this motherfucker at the end of every story.
Yeah, you know, as far as that goes, whenever I had already finished all mine before I started reading his. And so when I started reading them, especially his story, the cut of your jib, when I was reading those, I was like, oh my, I don't know if I went far enough in mine, because he like went over the top, fucked up on his.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
mine are spoilers here for people who are going to read this, but oh my God, when the nail clippers go over the tooth, holy shit, I'm full body chills.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, when that happens, I'm like, ah! Yeah.
So, all right, I'm cheating by looking at the table of contents, but when we start, God damn it, Brandon, yeah, take us. Sorry, go ahead, Pat.
Well, I was gonna say, I don't even think I have a table of contents in there yet. I hadn't finished it. As far as the formatting goes.
I thought they had it in this version because I had two different.
If you go back to the beginning, there's a copyright page that pretty much serves as a table of contents.
Yeah. There is that.
I dug though, you know, second story in there, and the first that you had, Firecracker Kings, is, you know, like Daniel's first story is kind of like balls to the wall from word one. And yours has this almost like faux quiet. It's like, hey, it's a coming of age story, and you know, there's kids bagging on each other in a, you know, a realistic way, if you remember being like a 14-year-old boy. And then it just, you know, spirals just out of control. And it was kind of cool to see that, like, oh, are we stepping back here? Like, no, we're not stepping back. There's some awful shit about to go down. And you know, you think when you think you've seen the worst, it's no, Patrick's taking us a little further then.
Yeah, there's a real bad scene that Christine actually, when she edited that story, and when she was reading it, she's like, oh my God, I can't believe you just did that. I'm not even done with the story yet. And I was like, yeah, it gets a little worse. But no, I think she was more shocked by that. I mean, there's a scene with the turtle that doesn't go very well. And I think that's probably it's gonna upset some people, I think. But the turtle doesn't end out on the positive end of things. But yeah, I wasn't even expecting to go there until I was thinking about the layout of the land, and you know, in Northeast Texas, and if you're in the creek popping fireworks, what are you going to see? And then, yeah, it gets kind of rough.
So sorry, man, I'm just going to throw one more thing in, and I'm going to toss it to you. I think of you know, the people who kill countless amounts of humans in their books, and then because of what happens to a cat, because of what happens to a dog, like, or in this case a turtle, that's where the hate mail comes from. So I suppose you can probably expect that.
Yeah, I guess it's because of the innocence of animals. They don't have evil in them like people do. Animals, at least from our perception, are acting on instinct. They're innocent lives, and so when something bad happens to animals, it does feel a little more wretched than when something bad happens to people. It's kind of one of those strange things of literature, but it's very much the case, because I've seen lots of people post about that. Like, I don't want to see bad things happening to dogs or animals or whatever. But sometimes you got to do what the story calls for. And I mean, this is splatterpunk. What are you gonna do?
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. Plus, it's hard. You know what? Bottom line, hard is uncomfortable, and it's fiction, man. Like, yeah, I totally get. I understand trauma and all that shit. I totally get it. It just sounded like I was being flippant when I said and shit, but I'm not being that way. It's that at the end of the day, shouldn't it hit you? Shouldn't do something to you? Like, otherwise, what the hell's the point? And if anything, it acts as a reminder of what's terrible. And if it bothers you that much, why don't you fight for like the actual animals that are hurt? But people act like if you do something in a fictional story, in horror in particular, and I'm kind of parroting what like Graf James White and the other folks on the extreme horror panel said a few episodes back, but horror writers kind of seem to get the blunt end of just whatever weapon people want to pick up. You don't see romance writers or sci-fi writers or whatever being accused of their worst and ugliest characters. For me, it's
we're the only genre that are consistently accused of being psychopaths and stuff like that, because of the things we write. I like the way Triana. I watched that just the other day. I like the way Triana put it. We said, "I'll kill a kid. I don't give a fuck." I'm kind of the same way. There are lines I won't cross, but fictional babies, fictional animals. Come on, it's horror. It's splatterpunk. Yes, it's horrible, but it's supposed to be horrible.
Yeah,
I'm not writing to pet you to sleep or sing you a little nursery rhyme. I'm wanting to shock you.
Absolutely.
Part of the shock and making you step back a minute and be like, oh my God, I can't believe I just read that. That's part of what I love doing. That's part of what I love to read. I told the guys on the Written and Read podcast, they asked me to highlight an author, and I talked about James Stokoe, who wrote Cows. And that's one of those books, like, every other page you're reading something and you're like, holy shit, I cannot believe I just read that. You're laughing out loud. It's so fucked up and so gross. You know what I mean? And that's not everything I like to read or everything I like to write, but there is something about that shocking aspect of splatterpunk fiction that, I don't know, I just like it. And a lot of people do.
It's a hell of a lot of fun. When I was growing up and I was in my preteen to adolescence, was when South Park was kind of starting out and really starting to get its legs. And the movie, I remember I played a lot of travel basketball. Me and my teammates were at a hotel in Maine, and the parents were doing their thing. We were in one hotel room just watching the South Park movie, and like, that shit should not have been. It's not designed, I don't think, for like 8th graders, but we ate that up. I used to love that. And when I was younger, The Simpsons was like the worst thing you could watch, and I used to love it. You know why?
Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah. If you're not supposed to look over this fence, most kids are gonna look over the fucking fence. And I mean, I think my opinion is that it comes down to one person's set of morals or lines of ethics, and we all don't have the same ones. And it's kind of fucking messed up to say, like, this is everybody's sort of like, you can't pass this line, otherwise you're a bad person. So bringing that back to Firecracker Kings, I felt that was something that kept crossing the lines, but in a good way. I had my earpiece in one ear while I was on my family vacation. So like I was down in Florida. My folks just moved there. I was down in Florida and it's fucking hot. So it kind of felt like I was in the same environment. And I got I know you know this, but I got a 2.5-year-old boy. And I'm just thinking a few years down the line, I really hope he doesn't do this because it starts out real innocent. Like, I mean, I was a kid with a BB gun and I tried shooting birds, but when I got close up to them, I couldn't do it. But then the next line is crossed. And when you guys know, when you're with a group of your friends, you're just having too much fun to know where the line is. And you kind of just demonstrate how.
Well, I feel like it's kind of like the way I told it. You got a bunch of friends together. One of them's usually the leader of what y'all are going to do. And if he's a bad little kid, y'all are probably going to do some bad shit. Yeah. Even if the rest of them are good kids. You know, that's kind of that adolescent age. You're so influenced by, you know, the coolness of your friend, or, you know, not wanting to look like a pussy by not going along with whatever they want to go along with. And I felt like that part of the story, not necessarily what they took part in, but that part of the story where they're so heavily influenced by each other, I think that's a very real thing with kids and adolescents.
Oh, sure. And Brennan, please take over after this, but I just wanted to point out one thing. And if this, at any point, if we break a spoiler, just tell us, you know, timestamp that and cut it out. But
I kind of broke the biggest spoilers, so look, that's okay.
At one point, they see a woman and they think she's a hooker. At no point is it ever established that she might not be. And that's the fucked up part. Right. Dude, look, I'm just thinking while I was reading this, but now it's kind of formulating in my head while I'm saying it. But I want to know what happens next. Like, is there a missing, like, was that one of the kids, like aunts, or maybe was that like that woman connected? Because I've never been to Texas, but if it's like kind of parts of even Jersey or Massachusetts where I grew up, everyone knows somebody that knows that person.
That's a good point. I've never thought any further about who the woman was.
I'm fascinated.
Yeah. Obviously she came from somewhere.
She's a firecracker queen.
And
I'm fascinated by that.
They're in a small community, obviously. So yeah, she probably came from close by, didn't she? I don't know.
Even if she was a hooker, though, and this is really interesting about like the Green River Killer, that they were talking about the families. They focus on the families, about how like fucking torn they are, and that's not a thing that I see a lot of fictional serial killer stuff doing, where it's like with hookers involved, the devastation with the families, because at the end of the day, that's someone's daughter, mother, you know, whatever.
Oh yeah, they got families too. I mean, a person's a person, no matter their occupation or how society looks at their occupation.
Person is a person, no matter how big or small.
Yeah,
that's
exactly. Good job, Horton.
We are speaking wisdom tonight on Headspace.
Go ahead, Brennan.
Not the first time we've delved into Seuss territory.
Capicoja, what up?
Quick aside, because we kind of got into it a few minutes ago. I feel like the conversation of, you know, you are not what you write is just, it's evergreen. It's always prescient. So I would love to hear if you have anything you'd like to add to that conversation, both as an author and a publisher.
Oh my gosh, yeah. What I write, read, and publish is probably what a lot of people think of the scum of literature is. You know, it's all blood and guts and disgusting things. Not all of it, but you know, there's a lot of it in that stuff. And you know, I'm a family man. I have 5 kids. I'm married. I live in a small town, and I haven't killed anybody in at least 3 weeks.
Yeah,
I'm reformed, but no, I'm just a regular guy. You know, I don't have any kind of criminal record, and I'm just a normal person. Yeah, we are stigmatized by what we write. I think that's just kind of part of things. But you know what I haven't done? I don't go by a pseudonym, and I've been told I should. But you know what? If it affects how people look at me, outside the horror community, I don't really care. I'm proud of what I write. I'm proud of what I publish. So if people are offended by that, oh well. I mean, it's just because I write fucked up shit doesn't mean I'm a fucked up person.
There you go. Nice little summary at the end there. Absolutely.
All right, Brennan, guess we're done.
Well, I thought you were going to jump in again. You keep starting and then organizing papers and stuff. No, I don't know what you got going on over there.
He's scatterbrained.
I can't
He's
finish.
cleaning his office.
No, I actually saw this come in. My wife talked to me. I looked on the floor and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. I got that Bob Ford book. So we're not talking about Bob Ford though. He is the next episode though. So that's
Bob Ford's good stuff.
Yeah.
I haven't published him yet.
You should. let's negotiate later. Brennan, unless you're willing to dive into something else, I want to go back to a different topic and then kind of come back to Visceral too, if that's all right with you.
Take us whatever ridiculous way you're aiming to.
So Death's Head Press, I know you've talked about it to death. I'm sure it's been talked about to death on many interviews. So is there anything about Death's Head Press that you and Jared haven't really explored or discussed publicly that you're interested in going over?
Something that hasn't been discussed, I think, enough yet is that Death's Head Press and Stygian Sky Media, who is now our mother company, we're going to be putting out a line of comic books and graphic novels, and we're starting that out with Mucho Mojo by Joe Lansdale. It's already complete. It's up for pre-order. You'll be able to buy that soon, so that's great stuff. Aside from that, we're pretty vocal about what our plans are and where we came from. We started from, neither one of us had any experience in publishing. I've told this story before, but Jared came to me one night and asked if I wanted to contribute to an anthology he wanted to put together about the Book of Revelation. And I said, sure, absolutely, I'm in. And then he asked if I wanted to help him put it together because he wasn't quite sure how to do all of it. And I said, sure, I'll help you put the anthology together, no problem. And then he said, well, if we're going to make this anthology legit, we should probably be a publishing company. And then I paused briefly and I said, yeah, sure, why not? And so basically within the span of an hour or two, we were a publishing company. Went and got the LLC shortly after that and became a thing.
I remember seeing that cover. I'm like, holy shit, that's awesome. And
isn't that an awesome cover? That's a Don Noble cover, which he's probably the most prolific cover artist on the planet. But
that's probably what I actually didn't know that. Yeah, I like Don. I think that he's a phenomenal artist. But
yeah, he's done a lot of great stuff.
That title is called And Hell Followed. It came out January. I'm cheating. I got the date up here. January 16th, 2019.
Splatterpunk Award winner.
Yeah. You got a long list of really exciting names in it, from Rap James White, Trap Jones. I don't hear enough about that guy, but he's all over the place. Who's also a publisher now. And then you got Christine Morgan, John Wayne, Communal, a bunch of other really exciting names in that genre. The one that Dig Two Graves, when did that come out? That's another anthology you guys did.
That came out also in 2019. I don't remember the exact month, but that was actually up against And Hell Followed for the Splatterpunk Awards. So it did real well too. But
I remember the first couple of years. I haven't followed it closely for like a year or two, but I do know that you guys were up for a lot of awards for the Splatterpunk Awards specifically. And I would love to talk about this publicly. I know I've said to you privately, but you were the very first publisher to ever give me personal feedback. I just reached out to you and I said, hey, and I didn't really know you. I just asked. I said, I'm just wondering what, and I thought, like, I was really uneasy. I thought, oh, I might sound like a dick, but I asked why didn't it make it? I forget how I worded it. And at that point, I had been writing for 6 years, spinning my wheels and not really getting anything published. And you gave me really good feedback. And ultimately, what I remember is you said you didn't feel the character, like you didn't feel anything he was experiencing. It's 100% accurate. But I think that's really important because I mean, that was what, 3-4 years ago. Yeah, I'll never forget that. And I think that's really important for publishers to try to do.
Well, I'll tell you, if somebody asks me for feedback, this is probably going to go viral now and everybody's going to ask me for feedback. But if somebody asks me for feedback, I give it to them, because, and I'll tell you why. Whenever I was in my early 20s, I was writing all these horrible short stories that never got accepted anywhere. Most times I would never get a response. This was back in the day when you actually put the manuscript in an envelope, mailed it off, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Most of the times I would never get a response, But this one time I get a response from, it was a magazine of some sort. I forget who it was. But, I pull out the note and I'm all excited, they've accepted my story. They've actually written back to me. But it was a rejection. And they brutalized my story. They told me all the horrible things that were wrong with it.
Oh, no.
But, they were doing it in a nice way. They're just saying, like, how many horrible things I did in this story, And my wife at the time, we're divorced now, but she looked at it and she's like, "Oh, Lee, they're mean." And I'm sitting there with a grin on my face, like, this is fucking awesome. This is exactly what I for a while I had it pinned up on my wall because that's what I heard Stephen King had done or whatever. But, I liked that they told me what was wrong. They didn't just not tell me. And so if somebody asks for feedback, whenever you get hundreds of submissions, you can't tell everybody why you turned them down. But
yeah, sure.
If somebody asks, I'm more than happy to tell them. And I don't remember your story exactly now, but I do recall whenever I was going through those submissions, if it didn't start off with a punch, like grab you right from the get-go, and this goes with any short story. If that first sentence, first paragraph, first two paragraphs don't grab the reader, it's not going to grab the editor. It's going by the. So that was the case with a lot of those stories. I know with Dig Two Graves, we didn't just have like 50 or 60 submissions. We've had hundreds of submissions. So it was like, if I opened up something and it did not start off with a bang or start off with some sentence that grabbed you, it was, sorry, no. You can't read all the manuscripts. You just don't have time for it. So,
what has Slush Reading taught you? Because there's always interesting takeaways when I hear people say this that I apply to my own writing. So that's kind of what I'm going for.
Yeah, when you're writing a short story and submit somewhere, if you haven't been asked for it, the way, if you're reached out to and say, "Hey, we want a short story from you," okay, you can start it kind of slow, but man, if you're submitting somewhere, you need to grab that editor's attention. Yeah. I mean, that's how I feel about it. Yeah, that's how I look at it when I'm reading submissions.
Yeah, I would agree with that because I mean, it's you can usually kind of gauge when you're looking at an open submission about how much interest it's going to garner, based on the press's reputation, based on the person who's editing, based on the pay. And I mean, you can almost kind of make that safe assumption that, okay, I got about 2 paragraphs here. Like it's a nice little pipe dream to think, oh, they're going to read all 15 pages of this story.
Yeah.
But it's probably not very likely. And I totally commiserate with your story about getting, all that here's your laundry list of things that you can fix. Cause I'll eat that stuff up. It's wonderful. It's a free lesson, from somebody who's telling you, here's, the bullet point things you need to do to kind of make it through this slush process. And I absolutely understand that the majority of publishers are not going to have the time to do stuff like that, but it can be frustrating as a newer author to get that pass on your story, and you don't know whether it was shit canned in the first sentence, or whether it made it to the final round and it was too similar to something else, or it was a last minute cut. You don't know whether to overhaul the damn thing, or that it's ready to go to just another market. So yeah. I mean, anytime a publisher can I was ready to make fun of Patrick McDonough for outing himself as the guy who responds to rejections, but and anytime that a publisher will take the time to just kind of go back and forth to here's what I liked, here's what you could do different, like that's golden. And it's cool that you do take the time when asked.
Yeah, when you just mentioned being too much like something else, that's a big one too, because horror's been around a long time. Originality is a major thing. I remember when I was doing the edits for Breaking Bizarro, I got so many submissions that were very similar to like a Franz Kafka. This person is a bug, or this person is a body part. This person is turned into whatever. It's basically just like knockoff Kafka. And it's like, come on, man. Even if this is written well, it's like, this has been written, even if it's not the exact same creature he's turned into. You got to be more original. You got to think outside the box. And that's like, probably the scariest stories for me are ghost stories. Those are the ones that harken back to my childhood, the stuff that's, the stuff like in the Haunted House book that, scares me. But I've published very few ghost stories because there's very few original ones out there anymore. You got to really dive deep to make a ghost story original these days. So yeah, I mean, the originality, the starting off with a bang, and obviously self-edit or have somebody else edit, but do it well. If there's a bunch of mistakes in there, look, we go through and edit all our books, no matter what. But if there's one mistake after another, it's not much we can do for you.
That's fair. Brennan, did you have anything else on this topic?
On the editing, on the publishing side, yeah. So we had Jared on, probably about like a year ago now, and we wanted to talk to him about the Splatter Western series, and he said nope. Said you got to talk to Patrick about that. So I want to hear all about kind of how that series came to fruition.
Okay. It's kind of funny because so many people have asked me that, and there's really not a very good answer because it just kind of happened. But because so many people were asking, I actually wrote a little short story and posted it to my website, pc3horror.com. It's a totally fictional story, but it's about me being at a rodeo where I see somebody basically get stabbed in the neck by a bull and their blood splatters everywhere over this sign, and it gives me the inspiration. I get inspired, and all of a sudden the Splatter Western is born. But yeah, that's a totally false account of how it happened. How it really happened is I had an idea selfishly for originally it was going to be a vampire story. That's not what I ended up writing, but I was going to write a vampire Western. And at this time in my writing and publishing life, my time was occupied so much with Death's Head Press stuff that I wanted to incorporate it into Death's Head Press somehow. And so I started getting the idea for the series. And then somewhere along the line, the term Splatter Western occurred to me. I do not remember the light bulb turning on. I don't remember how it came about in my mind, but somewhere along the line, the term Splatter Western came to me. And at that point, I went to Jared and I was like, hey, let's get some authors together. Let's do this series called Splatter Western, where it's like old school West fiction combined with violent, bloody horror. And let's see where it goes.
That's the best.
And he was, yeah, he was totally on board with it right from the get-go. And yeah, I think originally we had 8 authors, and now we're starting a second season. The first season had 13, so it's been a huge success. We didn't have any clue it would be a success in the beginning. We were terrified it was going to be a flop because we had committed to 8 authors and committed to 8 covers by Justin T Coons, who one of the greatest cover artists of all time.
He's a fucking genius, man.
He really is. And I hope we helped him a lot with advancing his career, because he deserves it. I know he's making pretty decent money on some of these covers nowadays. So, but yeah, it fell into place, and we had no idea it was going to be a success, but thankfully it was.
As far as, Justin, I mean, if you look through that series of 13 and you pick whichever cover you thought was the weakest, it's still miles ahead of like its company. They're just the color palettes on them, they're so unique. And in creating a brand, like, you just couldn't ask for anything better than this just signature stamp of the cover art.
It's like I've told other people in the past that we're working with somebody that probably in the future people are going to look back on and be like, man, he's one of the greats. Look, I don't know who this author was, but they had a Justin T Coons cover. That's kind of how I feel about his artwork. It's like, I think it's awesome that he paints them all on canvas.
Yes,
I think that's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of like Clive Barker's covers, where they're just it's his own style, but they are so his own voice that you're gonna, if you don't know the name, you're gonna know like kind of who he is by his other work, because eventually Justin's gonna do the right, like I do.
You can tell Justin's art no matter where you see it, no matter who's covering. You can tell it's like if you hear Carlos Santana playing the guitar, you know it's Carlos Santana.
Yeah,
it's just like Justin T Coons. If you see some art that's Justin T Coons, you know it's him.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I would also say, I mean, I don't know what circumstances led to it, but leading off with the Magpie Coffin, like that book just kicked the door down.
Yeah.
And it was, I feel like that was just the perfect book to start the entire series off with.
Well, the story behind it is, it's silly now thinking about it, because it is such a good book and perfect to lead off with because of the content. But the whole reason we led off with him was because it was between him and Christine Morgan, because they were the most well-known names of the original 8. Obviously, then we ended up with Brian Smith and Chandler Morrison, Christopher Ruffty. But before then, the 2 most well-known names were Wiley Young and Christine Morgan. And so it was kind of just a coin toss as to which one we'd lead with, because we didn't want to lead with me. Not enough people knew me. We didn't want to lead with M. Innenbach. Not enough people knew him. And that's how it was down the line, with the exception of Wiley Young and Christine Morgan. And thankfully, he wrote a damn good book in the Magpie Coffin. I think that just set the stage.
Yeah. So as far as season 2 goes, what can you tell us about, what to expect? What are you ready to share, or should I just shut up?
Yeah, I can share a little bit. We're going to be leading off with Chad Lutsky, who a lot of your listeners, I'm sure, will know.
Yeah, it's awesome.
We're going to have Haley Piper, K-Trap Jones. I'm going to forget a whole bunch of authors, but we have a really good line. Regina Watts is involved. A lot of great authors. Justin T Coons is not returning for season 2, unfortunately.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We wanted to, and he wanted to, but he also had a lot of other projects, and we kind of came to an agreement that we would move on to somebody else, and it's going to be a gentleman named Felipe Kroll, whose artwork is fucking awesome. He's from South America, and I forget I think he did a cover for Crystal Lake, I think is where I saw his art, and I reached out to him, and it was just fucking badass. And so we talked to him and came to an agreement. Love Justin. Wish we could have just continued on forever with Justin, but things are how they are in the publishing world. And we got Felipe Kroll, and we're happy with him. He's going to put out some badass stuff too.
Yeah, you were just talking about how Justin deserves all the success, and you guys successed him, right out the door. But
I think we successed each other for sure.
Yeah.
The Splatter Westerns would not be what they were without Justin.
Yeah.
And yeah, I certainly hope that we helped his career along, and I feel we did in a certain way.
And I think, though, if you're excited about the artist you have for the next series of them, and as cool as it would be to have Justin continue that, the fact that the next set of books is going to have their own characteristic and personality, I think that's really neat in and of itself, and kind of important too, to set them apart.
Yeah, that's kind of neat looking at it now, for sure. I think originally the way we had discussed it was, if we continue with Justin, he'll have to change up the format so it looks different, but now we got a completely different artist, and that's obviously not going to be an issue. It'll be easily distinguishable. And if we continue on to a season 3 and 4 and 5, or however long we want to go, maybe we'll just do a different artist every time. I don't, it's something to think about moving forward. Always find some badass new artist to put out there, people I haven't seen a whole lot of or whatever, and see where it goes.
And that's a cool idea. You know what? Going back to I want to say Volpe to be funny, but now it's really stuck in my head.
Go with it. Let's just go with it. Volpe.
Go back to Mr. Volpe's podcast. I said to him, I'm like, that's a really neat, that's a creepy logo. And he said that's I forget the guy's name, but it's a Russian artist. But seriously, man, it's check this out. I'm sure you've seen it, but
oh yeah, that one. Yeah, that is a cool one. I think that's the guy that does Aaron Beauregard's covers. I think I may be wrong about that, but
that does. If it's not him, it does look like it's a similar style. Would you say that? I don't even have this in my notes, but I just thought of this. Would you say that Aaron's one of the most extreme content-wise creators today?
Yeah, he's one of the most extreme consistently. See, I haven't read The Slav yet. I've read all his new stuff because I'm editing it for him. And Modern Hysteria is very fucked up. That's one of the best books I've read in a long time. If you haven't read Modern Hysteria, his newest release, that's really good. Let me think who would be the most extreme I've read. I mean, Dead Inside by Chandler Morrison is super fucked up.
See, I haven't. The only one I've read by Chandler is he actually sent it to me at December 2019, Until the Sun. It's a vampire novel.
That's a good one too. Not extreme though. Not extreme, but I mean, it's got extreme parts. I would call that extreme cover to cover, like Dead Inside.
Okay, yeah, because I was gonna say, man, I read it and there's some visceral fucking parts in that.
I mean, that's Chandler, but who's the most extreme one going? It's hard to say. Matthew Stokoe's Cows is fucked up. Christine Morgan does a lot of great stuff. I mean, Daniel Volt, he's right there with Aaron, though. They're right there kind of writing the same stuff as far as intensity level.
I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to jump to back to Death's Head Press for a reason. Because I love this chapbook so
I love
much.
That one too.
It's called for the audio, for the listeners, The Hungry Snow by Joe Lansdale. I love the stitching. It's just beautiful, hand stitched. But what I love the most about this is I found myself going back, those books where you have a string of words in such a way where you just have to keep reading it over. I found myself doing that a lot with this book. And I just kind of want to talk about Joe for a little bit. Joe R. Lansdale I think it's really cool how you guys are working with him on certain projects. And I want to hear your opinion as a publisher / author. But for me, being, I guess, newer compared to guys like Joe would be, it's really, he gives hope and he offers it to everyone. that's not a fucking asshole. And hearing guys like him, hearing older guys, older authors rather, that talk about how they were paid, other people ahead of them paid it forward, like Robert Block. I hear all the time about him, Richard Matheson, and Ray Bradbury, how they were all just these super nice guys that would always offer their time, or a Dick Lehman, how he offered his time. Like I hear Brian King tell that story about how he would support, Lehman would support them. And that's what guys like Lansdale does, and he does it in spades. So this is my long about way of asking you, Patrick, me, you, whatever, doesn't matter, what what your thoughts are on what someone like Joe, well, not someone, what Joe Lansdale offers to the, doing air quotes, a community of writers is.
Man,
it's a lot of words.
What would this little subgenre even exist without a guy like Joe Lansdale? I met him at KillerCon in 2018, I think. And he had no idea. This was when Death's Head Press barely existed. We were a company, but did not have a publication yet. This was before And Hell Followed came out. I had a few books of my own, and I had a setup at KillerCon. And of course, Joe Lansdale was there, and I watched him do a reading, and it was wonderful, as you would expect. But I was always afraid to approach him. You know, I'm not the most outgoing person on the planet. And even Jared, who is very outgoing, he was kind of standoffish about going to talk to Joe. But on the last day of KillerCon, I went and sat down in the lobby there. I don't remember if I was waiting on somebody, I guess. I was ready to leave. I'd already checked out of my room. I was just sitting in the lobby. And Joe Lansdale came and sat down right across from me, probably doing the same thing, waiting on somebody. And he made a comment like something about it being a good convention. And, you know, I was kind of taken aback by him addressing me. And I agreed, you know, it's great little event. And he asked where I was from. And at that time I lived in Greenville. I said, "Oh, I'm from Greenville, Texas." He said, "Oh, I've been through Greenville." And we started just a little conversation about Greenville, Texas. And of course, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, this is one of my fucking heroes just struck up a conversation with me. Probably doesn't even remember, because now all the interaction with Death's Head Press and Stygian Sky goes through Jared, because they become buddies, you know. But they live closer together, so I haven't had the chance to be in on their little brunches or whatever the fuck they do. But he was such a nice guy, and had no idea I was a writer, no idea I was a publisher. And that's the kind of person the horror community needs, especially in these subgenres where there's so few people rather to look up to in that regard, because we're all kind of on this same level where we're just scratching for sales, you know. Whereas you got Joe Lansdale here, who's written some of the same type of stuff we've written, but he's made a huge success of it. And so hearing from people like him, and before his passing, Jack Ketchum, I hear he was much the same way, and Richard Lehman too. That those kind of people influence us, and we're trying to get there. And they let us know that it is attainable to make a living doing this. That there are enough people that appreciate it, that you can build up a huge readership for fucked up content.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's been my experience with Joe. That's the only time I ever met him, because like I said, Jared's he's closer to him, and they've got a dialogue now, and they meet up from time to time. And I look forward to meeting him again. But that one experience was like, wow, this guy's awesome. I want to be like that if I make it. You know what I mean?
That's really cool, man. Brennan, I'd love to hear what you think of that.
I think the biggest takeaway from that is not just that we have we're talking specifically about Joe, but people, there's people like that in the genre that are willing to give back and, give their time. I mean, I'm still taken aback the first time he agreed to come on the show. And then again, he keeps coming back and he keeps talking our ears off. And every time it's surreal because you're Joe Lansdale. You've got to have better things to do. My big takeaway is it makes you, if you have even the slightest taste of success, want to emulate that way of being and help out the people who are still kind of scratching. You're kind of, you approach it with that mindset, like, man, if I get this book out here, then it's my duty to pass it on and, give tips, give help, give support to the people coming up behind me. If that book, sells more copies than I expect it to, then it's my duty to kind of use that extended platform to build up some names that I believe in that haven't, found that success yet. And when you can trace it, not all back, but a lot of it back to just the way somebody in a position like Joe's conducts themselves. I mean, to me, that's one of the biggest compliments you can give, is not just you're an incredible writer, but just that's the way you're human, I think.
On top of that, being a father and husband and a friend. He's just super duper inspirational. Plus, like, going back to the writer thing, that guy can like I read, for me, got him, Keen, Rob Kelly, Peter Straub.
Oh,
those four. I hope to write that well one day, because
I'm not leaving, by the way. I'll be right back.
Bye, Pat. Brennan, let's talk shit about Pat. What a dumb name.
I'm retrieving a beverage.
That's rude. He can hear you.
Come on, man. You're not gonna jump in on that, really?
Okay, I'm back.
All right, McDonough, were you finished with that thought, or?
I was just also going to add that, like, there are, not naming names, but there are people in whatever industry where they have the slightest bit of success, and hats off to them, but they act like fucking assholes. And Joe, I mean, the guy, like, I knew him before I realized what writers were. Like, he wrote for the animated Batman series. I loved that shit when I was a kid. He wrote Bubba Hotep. I loved that movie before I even knew who Joe was. I mean, like, the older I get, I'm just reading his books, and the Happen Letter. I've only read the first 3, but they're
wonderful.
Good God, they are incredible.
You know what? See, if I ever gotten on a podcast with him or in an extended conversation with him, I'd want to tell him about this experience. I used to read a lot of anthologies as a kid. So I've always been a slow reader. So definitely as a kid, what I preferred were short stories. And one of these anthologies I had, I forget its name exactly, but it was something like 100 Scary Tales or 100 horror stories or something like that. And, they're also, obviously, whenever you have 100 stories, they're all like basically flash fiction at that point. But there was one that always stuck with me, and it was called Duck Hunt. And it's about this guy who takes his kid duck hunting. But whenever they get to the spot where they're actually hunting the ducks, it's not an actual duck. It's a man dressed up as a duck that he's supposed to shoot. And it's like a really shocking story for a young, I don't know if I was a teenager or a preteen or whatever. But whenever I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, that is messed up. And it was a whole different kind of fiction. And at that point, I didn't really look at authors' names or anything. I knew Stephen King. I might have known T Coons, but beyond that, I didn't really know any authors. Well, I found a copy of that book several years ago, and I went flipping through it, looking for that story. By God, it was fucking Joe Lansdale that wrote that story. And I was like, holy crap, I should have known. Way back then, he was impacted with that fucked up story about a kid about to shoot a guy dressed up as a duck. But yeah, I always liked that.
That's awesome. All right, so this whole thing started because we were talking about that, hand stitched chapbook, and you guys are kind of putting out a line of those. Daniel Volpe as well, is that correct? Am I missing anybody?
Yeah, and Aaron Beauregard, Candace Nola. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting some because we have.
I did see Candace announce that. Yeah.
Yeah, we have several authors, and I'm forgetting some, and I apologize to those I'm forgetting. Oh, Candace is a great author. I just started her last book. That's going to be a great series of chapbooks. We were kind of looking for something to do outside the realm of splatter westerns and regular books on Amazon. We're trying, Amazon takes so much of your money, and we're trying to look at ways to get away from that. Start our own thing, and the chapbooks is kind of our start with doing that, and so is the graphic novels. And I think they're really going to hit a home run. I think the chapbooks are going to be a huge. Oh, Jeff Strand, we got Jeff Strand.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to be a huge success. We have Luke Spooner doing the covers for those, all of them. He signed on to do all the covers. They're all going to have a similar look of like old pulpy, like old pulp magazines and old pulp novels, and they're going to be fucking awesome. I think they're really going to take off.
Now, are these going to be kind of like the limited, like the Hungry Snow, or are they going to be more mass produced so that you don't have to worry about them running out?
It will probably be limited to an extent, not to the extent of the Hungry Snow, probably, because I think we kept that to 500, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. 500.
I don't think we've decided exactly how we're going to do it because we have the rights for them for between 3 and 5 years, depending on the authors. And it kind of leaves it open as to how we want to do it. Because obviously, if we print 200 copies, then they all sell, and then we have nothing for the next 2 years. We kind of fucked ourselves. But we haven't decided exactly how we want to do it, whether we want to have it unlimited or have a stopping point for it. But I guess we'll see as it goes along.
It was 500. I just checked. I got 227 at 500. What's crazy is I just want to bring up Joe one more time. Irrelevant to what we were just talking about, but he did talk about how he doesn't sign arcs anymore. And I thought that was interesting because he is in a position where like people are going to try selling them for stupid amounts of money for an arc. That's going to be a weird position to be in because, like, for example,
that's interesting. I didn't know that about it.
Yeah, you're saying like in Italy, super famous, and it's interesting for like the first week, but then after that, it gets tiring as to how many people try like talking to them and wanting to take pictures or whatever.
Oh, I don't doubt it. Yeah.
Huh. Where would you like to be when you're at your peak? Like, meaning fame, is that something that you'd be interested in, or is it kind of like, for me, it's like I would love to be in the position where, like Joe, where you're big, but you're not going to get mobbed anywhere in the US, and you can do traditional publishing deals as well as indie.
Yeah, I have no desire for fame, but I do want money. So, and unfortunately, in the writing business, they kind of go together. Yeah, I would definitely be satisfied with a Joe Lansdale position. I would love to have Stephen King money, obviously, but I do not want to go to Walmart. Not that I go to Walmart, because fuck Walmart, but I do not want to go to the grocery store and get recognized either. Whenever I'm out in public, just leave me alone. You know what I mean? Yeah. But you know what's funny? I used to work at the post office after and I'd had several books published, 3 books published maybe at that point. And I was doing some training in Dallas on how to drive a postal truck. And I went outside for my lunch break, and this guy comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, are you a writer?" And I was like, yeah, how'd you know that? And he recognized me from, I guess he follows me on Facebook or something. I had no idea. So that that's been my only experience in being recognized in public. But that was a cool experience. But if you're someone on Stephen King's level, it's probably like, oh my God, just please stop. Yes, I know you know who I am. It's got to get to that point for sure.
Yeah, like I heard this one story where King was like writing and signing to the point where he had a cut and he bled on someone's book that he was signing. He had to get a Band-Aid, and people wanted to have his blood on their books. And I mean, like, literally imagine a fucking mob that is literally having you drain your life supply out of your body.
Hey, that might be a good thing to do for Visceral too, though. I mean, it's got that gory kind of looking cover. If I were to just open up the first page and put like a thumbprint of blood on that first page,
call dibs. No, but seriously, it's fandom like that. They don't care. Like they may say that they love you, but they don't fucking care about you. Like like a real friend or whatever. It's gonna be so weird because like how many people are asking to have a favor from you? Like with Tyler Jones being friends with Chuck Palahniuk before Tyler, Brennan, and I were friends. Like I didn't want to sound like everyone else and ask like I was asking for like a favor. I kind of was looking for advice. Like I'm tap dancing around it, but like I didn't know how to ask, but I ended up asking him about Chuck, and because why not? You might only get one shot, and I was nervous about that. And that's really my only experience with that sort of thing. That
was a great podcast, dude. He seemed as natural as ever. He didn't seem like he was at all put off by having to be on the podcast or being asked to be on the podcast or anything. He was just totally natural about it. It's a very good podcast.
Thanks, man. So for Chuck, he's super nice, but I don't feel smart enough to talk to him.
He is a super smart guy. You can tell that. I listened to the have you listened to the if you ever listen to the Bret Easton Ellis show, he's been on there a couple of times, and just listening to them talk about literature is just it's beautiful, and it's also like, holy cow, these guys are fucking geniuses.
Yeah.
Who would be really interesting? It would never happen to talk to is Cormac McCarthy, because like
good fucking luck.
Like Clive Barker and Robert McCammon, there's walls that make it pretty fucking hard to get in touch with those guys. But it's like McCarthy. Like I was reading this article about the like 5. I've been reading a lot of like dark westerns and articles on that for
why are you doing that?
No, but Arthur McCarthy came up.
The cat's out of the bag on it. You can talk about it if you want to.
Is it gonna be public by then, the 28th?
I talked about it on my last podcast. So you might as well.
Fuck.
I don't know when it's coming out, so you might want to.
Dude, you should tell me that. I'm kind of your partner with this, you dick.
Well, not anymore.
You're out, motherfucker.
Oh, Brennan's in. I'm out. Brennan, I set you up. Don't cut me out.
It's because you replied to that rejection.
That's fair.
Yeah. You should have known better.
Pat, what are we talking about? I really wasn't going to talk about it. Wait, before you answer, sorry, I cut you off even though I asked you a question. I read an article about Arthur McCarthy's 5th novel where it is in this this person that wrote the article said that it's basically too fucked up and violent to ever get adapted to film. I haven't read the book. I forget the title, but it sounded incredibly cool.
Sounds good.
Yeah, but I want to talk to him. It's probably never going to happen. Why are we talking about this? Yeah, never say never. Yeah.
So you want me to tell about it?
Yeah, you're the one that I thank for everything. You and Jared.
So Patrick here and I are putting together a horror western anthology, and it's going to involve some big names, including Joe Lansdale, Al Going Back, Jeff Strand, Ed Lee, Who else we got, Patrick?
Kenzie Jennings, L.M.
Kenzie
Lebet,
Jennings, yes.
Bree Morgan.
I don't remember who all signed contracts. Bree Morgan has signed, so she's on. But we have it's going to be a really good horror Western anthology. I'm really excited about it. And the TOC is not done. We have some more great names to add. And there may be an open call. And Patrick will be reading stories. So good fucking luck with that. Pay attention to the first sentences.
Rewind this episode and for all the tips on how to get in.
Honestly, I'm taking the Gabino Iglesias approach because I always watch how he approaches anthologies and blurbs.
Oh, I'm curious. What does he say?
Basically, what he does is just kind of goes balls to the wall, and he doesn't seem to say no, but he's very hungry for doing as much as he can, and I think that's kind of what I mean by the Gabino approach, the Gabino effect.
Well, I'll say you've gathered some big names thus far, so I think you're doing a great job.
Yeah, and oh, thanks, man. I went to the next topic in my head, and my ADHD kicked in, so I apologize for that. I'm really excited to see a few other things about, and we're not going to throw the names out there, but I'm excited to see who we get for forward, what we get for a cover, who submits to the open call. I am beyond excited. I know I've told you, but I am beyond thankful for the opportunity for this. You and Jared are awesome.
For sure.
And I've wanted to work with you guys for like 4 years now, so I didn't think this would be how I'd work with you. I'm also in it, and to be very clear, I got the story accepted before an anthology was even happening. So
yeah, it's a great short story, and I told you from the get-go that it was a really, really good short story. And if we were to put out a horror anthology, this is before your editor, that it would be included because it's very good.
As soon as I got that email, I sent Brennan, Ronald Kelly, and I showed my wife that, and I am not kidding. I almost cried. Like, I had tears in my eyes because, like, dude, like, you were the first publisher to give me personal feedback, and I've been trying to be a novelist since 2013. It's almost been 10 years. So, like,
now I listened to some episode of this where you said you were working on like a war novel or something. Isn't that right?
Yeah. Oh wow, someone was listening to that part.
Did you toss that to the side?
I'm still researching. There's a couple we can talk about privately if you want, because I don't want to go too deep into that and lose track of your thing. But long story short, the bullet point is it's focused on the Korean War. My grandfather and this little South Korean that he met over there that he wanted to adopt, named Inji. And I got some letters, and I got a bunch of stuff from my grandfather. I've been researching a lot of it. It's not a war that's really discussed really a whole lot in
no, it's the forgotten war is what they call it, because nobody, it's like you go straight from World War II to Vietnam.
Yeah, and Korea is actually super important. I mean, the country itself was divided after World War II between Stalin and America. Oh my God, the president's slipping my mind. Truman, I think it was. BFDR, whatever. It was U.S. and Russia. Russia and China with the North, America and their allies with the South. And my grandfather even writes in a letter that he was a high school kid in 1950 when it started and didn't really know anything about it. And then there's this, the most successful global movie last year wasn't the Spider-Man movie. That was second. The first was a Korean War movie put out by the Chinese government. I watched it on YouTube. That was the only way I could find it in American English subtitles. It is called The Battle of Lake Chingching. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's based off of the most embarrassing loss in the U.S. Marine history, which was Chosin Reservoir. And General Douglas MacArthur thought that the U.S. troops would be pulled out within the first year. So they started in June or July, but they thought that the troops would get pulled out by Christmas. He thought all his troops would come back to their homes in America to celebrate Christmas with their family.
It's always like that in the history books. They're like, they thought they'd be out by Christmas. That's how it was with the Nazis and with Great Britain. That the war will be over by Christmas. Why is it always Christmas? It's never Christmas. Man.
I don't know. And
it's always like 3 years after that Christmas that the war ends.
Lasted for 3 years. And basically what happened was they got blindsided by the Chinese because the Chinese helped out North Korea. They ended up, North Korea was losing at that. They were getting pushed back out of Korea. And the Chinese just came out of nowhere and fucked up the U.S. Marine troops. And it was pretty bloody. But that movie, that Chinese one grossed it was like 1.6 billion globally, and it's banned in Malaysia, it's banned in a few Asian, because here's the thing, I said America doesn't really talk about it. It's still heavily kind of shadowed over that part of the world, Asia. It's banned in countries in Asia.
Well, I mean, China has 1 billion people that can watch it, so there's part of the thing.
Yeah, I know there's this journalist last year in 2021 that he was arrested for basically saying that China's involvement in the Korean War wasn't what it actually was, which it was. I mean, they are the bad guys. I don't care what you say, they're for communism, and they're not the good guys. But yeah, I could talk forever about this war, but I'm researching a lot about it. I knew my grandfather, but he was quiet, and I was too young to really think of asking this stuff. So I'm learning a lot about him. I got, even check this out. I got real dog tags from the Korean War. I looked this guy up, and it's neat. It's like that little that little clip is I don't know why there's two, because I would think that one was taken when the body was found, but this dude was he's not alive anymore. And my grandfather, I guess, made these little bracelets. It's this private first class. There's a list of soldiers that were killed or missing in action, and he was one of them. So yeah, I'm all in. Like for my birthday, I bought MASH, the entire series. That's a comedy, but like it's one of the biggest war shows ever, and it's the Korean War. And my whole point to all this is it's not talked about a whole lot. And I think there's a real opportunity to explore that in a fictional book. And for one last thing is if you go on Wikipedia, there's a list of Korean War based movies from every country that's done one. South Korea's got the most. America had a lot up until I think it's like the 80s, but they haven't done one in a while. And man, it's fucking brutal. Like, it's war, obviously it's brutal, but it's horror, it's crime. And I also got another one I'm working on, a World War II one, where my great uncle was shot. He was in the Air Force. His plane was shot. He was overseas, over enemy lines. He was in Hungary. He was right next to the Nazi border. And I read a letter that he wrote to about his experience. 13th flight, he was shot down. He did 6 more flights after that, and totaling 19 missions. So he was on a bomber. And I mean, I was related to these guys, and there's not even a book on them. And do you know how many cases of that are there? We'll never know.
Yeah, hundreds, if not thousands. Yeah.
And my cousin her and her husband are going to go to Hungary next month, actually, because they've been in talk with people in the Hungarian Historic Society, something like that. I don't know what the exact thing is called. And they're going to be checking out what's left of my great uncle's plane. And I know part of it was at this farm in Hungary. It's so fascinating, man. And you're in Texas, so like, I know from reading Lone Survivor by Mark Luttrell and American Soldier with Chris Kyle, that there are some of the biggest badass Navy SEALs out of your area. And I'm sure that you and Jerry got some family members worth looking into for that regard.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I had a grandfather in Korea and a grandfather in World War II, so I had both that. But I think those books both sound fucking awesome, and you should move forward with them. I actually have an idea of my own. It's going to be a World War One idea is what I had. We're in trench warfare, and I was going to have a character. They had all those underground tunnels in certain areas, and I was going to have it where, the ground collapses basically, and he's stuck in like this underground maze, this muddy underground maze. And I've been debating whether would it turn into a horror story at that point. Would he maybe see things? Would there maybe be things down there with him? Or would I just keep it straight on war fiction and it's just the horrors of war and whatever he goes through, is he going to hallucinate? What all is going to happen? But I love reading and listening to podcasts about, World War I, II, Korea, Vietnam. I love all that shit. I love the history of war. And I want to incorporate that into some of my fiction too. So I definitely think it's a good idea for you to move forward with that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, you know what? I'm on a writing break right now. I haven't said anything publicly because, honestly, most people probably don't give a shit, and that's fine. But I've told a few friends because I'm focusing on some stuff. But I had a book I was working on based on true crime near here, but then I thought about it. I'm like, the opportunities come and go. And if I were to have 1 or 2 books out, which ones do I really want out? I've even talked to Brennan about it, and that I've been focusing on the Korean War one for a while. So I'm just going to pull the trigger and do that when I get back to writing.
Yeah, go for it.
So all those edits I just did on that other story, just down the garbage chute.
Nope,
right?
They're saved. They are saved. They're saved. I'm not getting rid of that. I save everything you send me because I love you. But I do appreciate it.
Okay.
Brennan, I don't know where to segue from this point, so can you save me?
There is no segue from this point.
No. All right. So, Patrick, we have, I think we've touched on a lot of, if not everything, but whether it be Death's Head Press, Dead Sky Inc., or Stygian Sky, are there any upcoming projects that you have not talked about that you would like to plug?
Sure. I will have a novella coming out in July called Grandpappy. And you asked earlier about the most extreme and fucked up authors and books and stuff like that. And I kind of feel like this may kind of trump them all. I'm kind of preparing myself to be canceled. It's funny, every night after I'm done reading, my wife sits down at the table, and after I'm done writing, rather, my wife sits down at the table and reads what I've written. And I kind of sit over in the living room and watch her reading it, and she'll be laughing in certain parts, stop and say, "Oh my God, that's fucked up." And it's just so, she's read a lot of fucked up stuff. She's read Dead Inside. She's read all my works. She's read, all this stuff. But watching her read this one, it is, it's been an experience to write in and for her to read. And I think it's really going to hit pretty hard, hopefully. But it's, if I can give a brief synopsis, it's about this guy that goes to take care of his grandfather who's on hospice care. And he spends a couple of weeks with him. And this guy, the main character's name is Charles. And he has his own issues. He likes popping pills, and he might be a little crazy. And the grandfather, who's all contracted and laying in bed and supposedly can't do anything, has his own fucked up past, which we keep flashing back to. And maybe he's able to do a little more things than we think he can, even though he's recluse to the bed. So it's a very fucked up story. And I think I don't know if y'all saw the picture of the cover I made for it online, but the cover is of this old man's foot with these grungy toenails sticking off of it. It's a real picture. I found it a stock image online, and it's a disgusting picture. That's
your cover?
It. Yeah, I posted it online, and people were reacting to it and saying all this stuff. Oh my God, I'm gonna throw up and all this nasty stuff. And I commented, yeah, well, just wait till you read it. That's not, hey, if that gets to you, just wait till you read it.
I mean, Visceral too. That was my first experience with your fiction, and that was phenomenal. Really, no bullshit, man. I think you're a great writer. So Yeah, I'm definitely interested in that. And that World War one. That's a lot of ones. You
Yeah,
should.
I don't know where that is on my docket. Yeah, I've got so many ideas in my head. I don't know where that is in line, but that's one I've wanted to do for a long time.
Be a douchebag like me. Ignore all your friends' notes that he took time to do on a story and say, "Fuck it."
Just go for it.
Thanks for putting up with me, Brennan. So, Patrick, what are you currently reading?
Play It As It Lays by Joan Didion. Classic, not horror. I always have edits going on though. I edit for people, and I just finished up edits for what's the name of the book?
That's a weird title.
Yeah, it's being put out by D&T Publishing. I think it's The Screams of the Butterflies, The Screaming of the Butterfly or something. And it's a really, really good book. And I forget the author too. Fuck me. But so somebody's going to call me out on it. But it was a really good book. But I'm always doing edits. I do edits for Aaron and Daniel Volpe too, and other people. But I'm always reading something, and a lot of times it's work. I don't get to read for pleasure as much as I'd like to. I've been working on this Joan Didion book for a few months now. I love it, but I just don't have time to read for pleasure as much as I'd like.
I totally get that. Yeah, so I didn't know you were, for some reason, I didn't know you were like an editor, freelance editor, rather, until I read Rowan Hill, her debut with D&T Publishing, as well as Nico Bell's latest book, also with D&T Publishing. I thought you did a good job. I enjoyed it. Both.
Thank you. Yeah, those are both good books. Yeah.
Brennan, sorry, I had a brain fart for a second. What are you currently reading?
Let's see, what am I currently reading? I just finished Clickers versus Zombies. I've been blasting through the Clickers series in the last month or so, and I just finished the last one. I've been reading a lot of Brian Keene this year, and I think I read the last book that you need to read in order to get to the Seven, which he describes as his kind of Dark Tower, or at least book one in his connecting works. So I'm going to jump into that one pretty quickly. And I am also reading The Big Sleep by Raymond Chandler, at the suggestion of Mr. Lansdale. Yeah, it's fantastic. And I don't know, I've never read Chandler before, and I don't know if I expected it to be more dry, but it's fucking hysterical. The internal monologue on Marlowe is just it's spot on. It never gets boring, and you could see why somebody like Lansdale would say you've got to read this book. I'm digging it. McDonough, how about you?
Yeah, so like I said, I just finished Visceral 2. I finished that today. I made sure that I got that all the way. Oh my God. I said I was going to come back to that book. I never did. That's on me. I'm very sorry about that.
I was supposed to bookmark it, I think.
Well, okay. We did cover a few of the stories, so I guess it's good that we didn't spoil, because that's not really how our show's designed, to spoil everything in a book. We want people to read it. So I hope that if you listen to this, that you want to read it. What I am starting tomorrow is Tyler Jones's Almost Ruth. I know, Brennan, that you've had very kind words about that. I'm just pulling up my Goodreads because I forget all the shit now because it goes in the digital memory bank. Oh, I'm also reading Anybody Home by Michael J. Seidlinger. It's a home invasion book, but it's really not the typical format / narration of a home invasion story. I'll leave it at that.
That's Clash, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what Clash books. Lisa.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine it would be anything typical. Yeah.
Speaking of Clash, Christoph Paul is writing a splatter western for us.
No shit.
Really? I did not know that. That's awesome.
I met them at Scares last year. They were really fun to talk to. Just really nice, two nice people that I like how they experiment a lot with books, take chances, it seems like, but
yeah, for sure, they definitely do that.
I feel like it pays off. It's really cool seeing a wide variety of different publishers. Pat, where can people follow you?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook. I occasionally check in on Instagram. Very rare occasions I peek in on TikTok. I do not have a Twitter. You can find me pc3horror.com, deathsheadpress.com, stygianskymedia.com. We always have books for sale on all those sites, so check me out.
Very good, sir. And do you have any final thoughts?
Let's see, how long have I been here? I've spent an hour and 46 minutes of my life on this podcast.
What a waste
You'll
of time.
never get it back.
Sold.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a final thought. Brennan, what are your final thoughts?
I want to thank Patrick for his time. I want to encourage people to pick up Visceral 2. May 10th, I think it's out.
That's it.
Check that out. Even if it's just for that back and forth nature we talked about. It's weird to say it's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of fun.
This is the part where you're supposed to ask me, but I'll do it anyways. Pat, do you have any final thoughts?
It's implied.
Yes. Oh, well, I'm not smart enough to pick up on cues even when we see each other's face. Yeah, my final thoughts are, Pat, it's a real pleasure talking with you. Even if we weren't working together, I'd still be very excited because I mean, Visceral 2 seriously just like sold me, man. It lives up to the title, which not every book can do that. That's a strong word to have for your title. So yeah, from that weird fucked up creature that Daniel, I think it was Daniel's story, made to have a baby to
that was mine. That was my story.
Okay, my apologies. To Firecracker Kings. You know what? I did want to talk actually really quick about the evolution of communication. That sent so many weird images in my head about like, I don't know what you were going for, obviously, because I'm not in your head, but the way I took it is that it's kind of social commentary on automation, which is always throughout history, it's always terrified people. Far before computers, it's a social commentary on conforming to one idea where you have to, or you're going to be forced to. And I think that's relatable before social media, but it's very relatable to social media with a lot of the loud people. I think it was. Go ahead.
With that one, I actually had the idea for that for a long time, and I tried writing it a couple of different times, and it just wasn't working for me. And you know, the evolution of technology was also always a part of it, but I think the conformity part was something very new to this day and age, and just made it all work a lot better than my previous tries at that story.
You know, man, there's so many things that jump out at me with that story, but one thing that just like I thought was so fucking weird in the best of ways was you talk about, I can't remember exactly if it was a newscaster or it was someone on the television talking, but his mouth wasn't moving. And it's just that they have these weird growths and they can communicate with each other as if they are transmitters / receivers. And I mean, I love technology horror, tech horror, whatever you want to call it. I'm a huge fan of Black Mirror. And it's because of like, you know, you got us being symbiotic with tech. We really are. You got smart watches, you got smart glasses. We're talking about all this technology where we're basically part of our creation.
Well, it's like, how far are we away from something similar to that being a reality? I mean, there's that Neuralink now is in the works, where they're going to hook you up to basically the internet.
Yeah, and that crazy motherfucker Zuckerberg, fuck that guy. That's my opinion. Brennan's are the shows that he's focusing on the metaverse, which I mean, he's not crazy. Like that's seems like that will actually be the next step after the internet. And
yeah,
there will come a time, I think, when we're alive, if we stay alive long enough, where we will see a blur between we don't know what our senses are or what they actually are. We can't trust them, and that's fucking scary. That shit scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's coming at some point, and there's probably no stopping it at this point.
Deep fakes, it's like a deep fake. Like you can make anyone, if you can make anyone look and sound like they're saying anything, like you can't trust. What are you gonna be able to trust? Like even if you can't even trust your, in this scenario, your wife, your kids, whatever, it's just paranoia.
Yeah.
And then they got you, man. Let's stick to our books. Okay. That's a long final thought. Pat, I don't want to just have see you later, alligator outro. Do you have any final thoughts from any of that? Did that spur any final thoughts?
Yeah, I do want to thank y'all for having me on. This has been a good podcast. I hope people enjoy it. Patrick, I look forward to working with you more on this anthology. Brendan,
I can't wait.
I haven't read your story yet, Brendan. I'm sorry. But
it's all right.
I hear it's wonderful. I hear it's wonderful. So I look forward to having both of y'all in that, and great things looking forward.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely.
I'm super excited about that. Listeners, next episode, it is episode 145 with author of Burner, a great fucking book. It has remnants of Jack Ketchum in it for sure. Spirited Jack, I think is very fair to say. That's what Bob Ford or Robert Ford, he goes by 2 different names, so I'm gonna have to ask him about that. Listeners, as always, you have many choices in podcasts. Thank you for picking us.